Hey folks, this is DeLandTech with my first ever macro lens review. Unlike some of the reviews that I've seen of this lens though, I'm not just gonna take it out of the box, show you the contents, take a few photos and call it a review, even though I've only had about 5 minutes worth of experience with it. I've been shooting with Canon's MP-65mm macro lens for 13 years. I started out shooting with the 100mm macro and extension tubes, diopters with teleconverters. The thing looked like a bazooka, and I finally realized that what I needed was more magnification in a smaller package, and at the time, the MP-65 was just about the best option. I want to cover the negative aspects of this lens first. It's heavy. It weighs about roughly 2 pounds. The weight of this lens is actually out toward the end, and as you extend the lens to increase the magnification, the balance kind of feels odd when you're hand holding a rig and trying to photograph something handheld. Over time, this lens is going to break, and it's going to break because there is like a cable running between the electrical contacts and the aperture assembly in this lens. And as you extend and contract it, that cable is going to bend back and forth. Eventually it's going to break, and error 01 is going to be shown on your camera, displayed on the LCD, which is basically a communications error. It's telling you that the camera can't talk to the lens, clean the electrical contacts, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, it's the cable. The first time it happened, Canon replaced it and just charged me for the parts. The second time, I think it cost me about $400 US to get it fixed. And I promised myself then that the next time it broke, I was going to buy a second copy, send my old copy back to Canon for repair, and then when it came back, that would give me a spare, because I have that lens on my camera almost 100% of the time. So here is the brand new lens, and it feels weird because the magnification ring is actually stiff on this one. I haven't broken it in yet. On the plus side of the house, this lens has a floating lens group to correct the focus as the magnification changes. A lot of people will tell you that things like extension tubes don't affect image quality because it's just an air gap. Well, the fact that it's an air gap and that air gap isn't impacting image quality is true, but most lenses are designed to produce a sharp image at a fixed distance between the back of the lens and the image plane, in this case, the sensor in your camera. And as that distance increases, it's no longer producing a sharp image circle anymore. And depending on the lens, depending on how sharp it is initially, depending on how much extension you use, sometimes you can get away with it and it's not too bad. And other times you notice some softness as you start adding more and more extension tubes between a lens and a camera. So the floating lens group in this lens that's correcting the focus as the magnification changes works really, really well. There is a difference in image sharpness between f14 and f16 with this lens that's noticeable to me even at life-size mag that I really can't chalk up to diffraction alone. So I think this lens has a difficult time producing a sharp image circle right at f16, but if you bring the lens down to f14, that problem just goes away. I shoot with this lens from life size to 5 times life size at f11. Diffraction does take my lunch money, but if your light quality is really good, and if you're doing everything you can to control the motion in the scene, then diffraction is not that big of a deal. It's manageable. The lens comes with a tripod collar that if you shoot handheld like me, you will never use. What it doesn't come with, and it should, is the lens hood. And this is a really weird looking lens hood that Canon builds for this lens. Now, the purpose of it is to keep light from the flash from hitting the lens, going in and messing up the contrast of your images. You can buy a plastic knockoff of this thing that costs about $20. This one costs $30. I prefer the Canon one, and not just because I'm a Canon snob, but I just like the metal one over the plastic, more durable. I do not recommend the MP-65mm if you have no experience shooting at life-size magnification. If you do have some experience shooting at 1 extra higher, then the learning curve won't be so bad. If you try to buy one of these and use it as your first macro lens, the learning curve is going to be almost vertical. Don't do it. And when I'm talking about shooting macro, I'm talking about shooting at life-size magnification and higher, not shooting close-ups, not shooting a mountain range with a macro lens and then calling the resulting image a macro photo. No. Oh, and by the way, this makes a terrible portrait lens. That's all for me. Until next time, folks, happy shooting.